Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Niitsitapi, Tsuut'ina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Satu Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage.
The hope is always that people will, if they can't read the book, maybe they'll listen to it through us. So I appreciate you all taking the time to share, and we'll start with Kat if you want to go from there.
Hello, I'm Kat. I use she and they pronouns. I am a settler of British and German descent who was born on Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg. And I've been a member of this book club for over 5 years now. I'm grateful to be here. I'm also part of the Reconciliation Action Group and also run my own book club called the Settlers Book Club. And we're also reading Jody Wilson-Raybould this month. So it's a full-on month.
Morgan, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you. There's a lot going on. Kids are making lunches and cleaning up, and there's music going, and I'm just like, I'm really happy to be here today. I sent Michelle a text because I wasn't sure. I kind of got the details sort of halfway through the cycle, so it's already hard for me to complete a book in 1 month, being ADHD and dyslexic. So I appreciate that you're open to people just coming, and regardless of where they are in the book, being able to absorb the lessons from it. I am a settler here, born and raised on Treaty 7. I'm a complete random mix of European people. It's I'm still learning all of the influences. Hey kids, I'm just on this call, okay? Anyways, I think I'll just leave it at that for now and pass it. Sorry, I came on as a giraffe or something. I don't know what was happening. I was like, take it off, and it just kept me as a giraffe. It was kind of fun, but I was like,
I was here for it. I thought it was great.
You don't know me yet. Anyways, thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. It's great to meet you, Morgan, and good to see you, Kat and Michelle. My name is Wendy Benoit, and I go with she and her pronouns. I was born here on Treaty 7 and lived a few other places on Turtle Island before living most of my adult life here in Treaty 7 territory. So have been a member of this book club for a few years now. Really do appreciate all the discussions we get to have together, but also the really just wonderful selection of books. And also thank you, Kat, for always sharing more information with us about what Settlers Book Club is also reading. I have not been able to manage to do more than one book club, but do keep a regular list of all of these ones to be sure to read. And once again, this was another fantastic one to have a chance to look at. So just thanks very much for the chance to be here and talking with each other. I think what I like most about our book club is that our conversations do seep into other conversations that I have throughout the month. And so I feel like that helps me in the area of pushing toward action, and what are the kinds of daily actions that I can take as part of being a treaty partner. So thanks very much. Really looking forward to the discussion tonight.
Gosh, me too. So just kind of like everybody else, we're in a big I don't, it's a house. It's a house. It's a massive house. I'm not used to being in a place that's fancy. So the dogs are like wanting to investigate and, but also found toys and they want to play. So it's been kind of funny watching this. And Hugo, who was so upset the entire drive down here, he's just like, okay, I think I can finally relax. We're all together. And now he's like giving us side eye and his back because he's mad at us. So that's what's happening here. So, and I also just wanted to give some a quick for folks who are brand new or who are listening. Just when I first started the book club, I'm coming on 10 years, and when I very first started it, what happened was there were some non-Indigenous folks that kind of opened the conversation, and because of uh, the topic, they really demonized the writing. And my daughter was there, and I could see the defensiveness and the anger. And from there on in, I've decided, okay, we better, if we're going to have a book club, it better be Indigenous people speaking first. And so, and then we had to create the guidelines, and every single person here I know has already seen or have even better guidelines. And so we're just trying to create that safer space. And then I decided, I'm going to start recording these. And that meant a few people, ask, oh, can I not be recorded? And that was fine, but then they just didn't come at all. And so, I know everybody has a different reason for being here. So I always appreciate those who want to come here and have the discussions. Again, I do give the option to pause it just because, there are some things that I can't say on here if I'm talking about a nonprofit and I name them. Those are things that I would edit out or just pause it and say, oh my God, you guys, listen in. Where's the tea? So I just want to create that. We do have a friend of ours who isn't here today, but is normally here, and they go by the name Siri on here, and they have always blacked out. And whenever they speak, I always pause so that their face is never online. And I was just reminded with my aunt and uncle how much they'd never want a digital footprint ever. So like it matters for some people, and I want to respect that, so that if there are other people who are like a little nervous about coming, just know I would pause the conversation for them in order to speak freely and hopefully learn from folks about it. So, and with that, let's get started. Geez, reconciling. I just keep talking. Holy. Okay. So if I said that everybody had to finish the book before they're allowed to come to a book club, I probably wouldn't have had half the book clubs we have, because I didn't finish this one either. I did make it to chapter 4, and I was skimming through it, and I'll probably finish it tonight because, once you kind of get started, you want to finish it. So I'll probably finish it tonight. But I did, I'm that person that everybody hates that like marks up their book and dog ears it. I'm that person. But I also was lucky enough to go to WordFest and get Jody to sign it for me. And I got to meet her partner in crime there, Rodesh Dinesh. So if you go onto WordFest, there's probably that interview available on their YouTube. So if you are really interested in just listening to that, like, go ahead, 100%. It's probably open and available to everybody. So, and what did she say? I didn't even read it. Geez, what did I? Just Michelle with love. So anyway, I love her. Always have. I've done multiple podcasts about her from years ago. So I started dog earing on page 48. And this was where a lot of people, like, they don't know about the doctrine of discovery if they haven't read the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. One of the calls to action is to acknowledge the harm that has been done with that. I was on TikTok and had somebody say, oh, well, the Anglican Church is doing so much better on reconciliation. So then I said, no, that's not true. And the reason why I really like these 2 pages especially was it like Canadians, this week on TikTok, I really said the concept that Canadians are quick to point the finger at Mark Carney and say he's a fascist, but yet don't see the three fingers pointing at themselves. And they don't see themselves like they'll fight for Palestinians, but they don't see how they are the Israelis to Palestinians here in Canada as settlers to Indigenous people. And I always try to talk about it as treaty partnership, right? Like if people were, if they identified as treaty partners and they acted like treaty partners and they gave equality. But I said instead, we've always had a boot on our neck with the Indian Act. So like for people to be like, well, Carney's a fascist, and it's like, do you understand what the Indian Act actually is? So, and I really felt like when I started reading this, that really helped with like proving it. Like all of these passages that came out of here really talked about how terrible the attitude from settlers was. And on page 50, I really like this part. When Europeans first arrived in what is now Canada, there was recognition by both Europeans and First Nations on the significant differences they observed of each other. And they kind of go into it a lot. And then you hear Andrew Graham speak so like how the Cree, you know, people had like true freedom and liberty, and a leader was somebody that they followed because they gave good advice, they did good things, but they weren't a horrible human being. But this was at the time where they started to do slavery and land theft, right? So they just didn't see people as people, whereas obviously the Cree seen people as people because they were people. And I just thought it was really sad that their racism was so deep and so embedded, that, and arrogance, I suppose, that they couldn't see Indigenous people as people. And then it talked a lot about Rupert's Land and the Hudson's Bay Company, and you know how that was land theft and embedded capitalism. The Royal Charter of the Hudson's Bay Company of 1670. Like, it's just so wild to me that the Hudson's Bay just closed all their doors, and all of this history that started from 1670 was just going to be auctioned off. Like, that's like, is it just me? Like, is that actual insanity? Like, I'm not trying to be ableist. It's just like we are, 10 years past the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We're 10 years past that, having some kind of dialogue about the significance of all of this documentation, and they're just going to auction it off. Like, that doesn't make a lick of sense to me. And I just don't understand why Canadians are okay with it. Like, there was no outcry, there was no protesting, like nothing. It was just wild to me. It was just like, okay, moving on. Just wild. So yeah, so I took a lot of that. I loved some of the different quotes from different chiefs as well. I didn't dog ear for a long time. Why didn't I dog ear for a long time? This was all great quotes. I was reminiscing to some of the folks that Confessions of a Dead Man, it's a fictional take about Duncan Campbell Scott. And it's like, if you were talking to the ghost of Duncan Campbell Scott, what would that sound like? And it's a fun book to read because like they do a lot of quotes like you see out of this. Only, he has this pompous, arrogant position, even as a ghost. It would be like, well, we were saving those savages, and so it's quite funny. So, and I just bring it up because, this is September's book club, but maybe for October, other than the teenage slasher one that we're doing, like it's a funny book, especially if you like that kind of history. So, okay, and then when I started dog earing again, was kind of talking about the RCMP. So I'm already at 126, and the horrible things that they had done to Alert Bay, Campbell River. They have this beautiful statue on 127. I'm sure you all seen it here. Can you imagine that unveiling in 2010, the high Arctic relocation to acknowledge that? That is such a terrible, like whenever I think of my dogs and I see them and I think about the RCMP killed all the Satu dogs too. They killed all the Eskimos, the Inuits. They called them Eskimos at the time, but the Inuit sled dogs, they killed them all. It's so hard for me to read that. And then so the next page has some quotes that I know I can't read that without crying, so I'm not even going to try. And some of these quotes in here, that they even said the word genocide long before we ever talked about it in the national inquiry, long before we talked about it, even before the Royal Commission. I was surprised to see that. And then they did a really good job talking about child welfare all the way back over to 155, the damage done through the 60 scoop. I was really glad they had encouraged everybody to read these things. And the reason why is because they may not read Jody's other books, but this is a good one for kind of giving that full history. The only thing I thought it was missing from that, if I was to critique it, is that they didn't, the TRC books, like show the direct pipeline of creating child welfare because they knew they couldn't continue with Indian residential school because they're fucking cheap asses. So rather than, continuing the school or investing in the schools, no, we'll just do the 60 scoop and create child welfare. And that just so angered me that this book kind of didn't put that together, because if nobody reads anything but this book, like, I don't think they'll piece that together if they haven't read the TRC. So that kind of annoyed me a bit, but I dog-eared 161 because it talked a lot about Frank Calder becoming the first person elected to the legislature, having a cabinet post. And I underlined this here. In 1982, the federal government also adopted the specific claims policy. And in 1995, the recognition of the inherent rights of self-government policy. So in 1995, we were talking about self-government policy, but it's 2025, and what has changed, right? Like, it's been 30 years, and what has changed? So that kind of made me mad. One of the strengths of this book, especially up to this point that I'm talking about, is how it really put together all of the legal cases that had led to the rights of Indigenous people that haven't really, I haven't really seen that in a lot of the other books that we've done, including one of my favorite ones. I want to say it was like January, February, where it was like braiding the legal orders. Like, that was a really good book, but this one's even better for showcasing how all of the cases have impacted Canadian law and Indigenous people for the better. So I really enjoyed that part of this book as well. So it's really hard for me to critique a book when, one, I've never made one, and two, like, you look at all of her books together. I mean, this is the expert on this, so who am I? Another really great part that I really enjoyed, 168, 169, was all of these great quotes coming from our people explaining how shitty the circumstances are, to Jean Chrétien, to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who have some of the worst quotes in here. My favorite one by Pierre Elliott Trudeau: "We'll keep them in the ghetto as long as they want." And then there was another one here, and I want to say it was from Mulrooney, where he said, I can't lump all Indigenous people together after that terrible Harold Cardinal, or no, Elijah Harper, stopping us from moving forward. Like, Elijah Harper was some kind of evil demon spawn. I'm like, holy, rest in piss. Oh, 171. The Berger Commission, like, that's a big part of my people's history too. So it's really great reading all of these quotes here, not just about Berger in general, but also like all of these Inuit, Métis, and First Nation leaders. So just wanted to read this one because he's Dene, and this is at the bottom of 171. You're coming to destroy a people that have a history of like 30,000 years. Why? For 20 years of gas? Are you really that insane? The original General Custer was exactly that insane. You still have a chance to learn, a chance to be remembered by history as something other than a fool bent on destroying everything he touched. You still have a chance. You still have a choice. Are you a strong enough man to really exercise your freedom and make that choice? You can destroy my nation, Mr. Blair, a prominent Calgary oil man whose company had applied for pipeline rights as a part of a consortium who attended the hearings, or you can be great help with us and our freedom. Which choice do you make, Mr. Blair? Which choice do you make for your children and mine? See, it's just in me as a Dene to always be telling Calgary oil men off. Like it, I have proof. But then he keeps going. It's fantastic. George's Erasmus, which was our last book club, given the dishes on it as well. And like some of these activists I had never heard of before. But Thomas Berger describing the commission findings, it is my conviction that the social impact on the Native people will be devastating. I think the economic benefits to the Northerners generated will be limited. And I wish that argument would be made literally about everything. But, it is what it is. Yeah, I'd never heard of Henry Bird Quinney or Eric Robinson. And these were such great quotes about colonialism and the foundation of a lot of the Indian Brotherhood. Of course, a lot of BC content coming up. And I really love the Métis, the way she put that together for folks to understand how Métis are made. Because when I say it, everybody's like, I think she's racist towards Métis. I'm like, or you can read from Jody Wilson-Raybould, this page to this page. So I really like that. And yeah, and then Brian Mulroney and his terrible quote. What a piece of crap. Holy. I mean, I knew he was bad, but it's pretty bad because he talked so ill of Elijah Harper. And I just can't. Yeah, this was his original quote. Aboriginals are not to blame for Meech Lake's failure despite Elijah Harper's stupidity. He turned down a sweet deal. You imagine saying that? What a racist piece of shit. And to the Mulroney family, if you hear this, happily tell you that to your face any day, twice on a Sunday. Absolutely a Sunday. Then, of course, lots of the Oka crisis, the Ellen Gabriel, George Erasmus, and like just such a great history, the way they put this together. And then starting, of course, talking about the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. Oh my God, there's so many great quotes in this. Like this, I'll probably flip through this many times over because there's so many great quotes in this entire thing from different folks. I underlined over here, we're on page 209, about the justice system. And in 1999, Aboriginal people are overrepresented in virtually every aspect. There is national-wide bias against Aboriginal people in Canada, and there is evidence that this widespread racism has translated into systemic discrimination. The Canadian justice system has failed Aboriginal people, First Nation, Inuit, Métis, on and off reserve, urban and rural, in all territorial and governmental jurisdictions. The principal reason for this crushing failure is a fundamental worldview of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people with respect to such elemental issues and substantive content of justice and proceeding and achieving justice. Oh my God. So that's basically where I got to. I've seen a lot of the apologies that are still in here, some really great quotes about the MMIW. Report talking about Idle No More, and then already seeing Wab Canoe getting sworn in. And yeah, so like I'm going to finish this tonight because I know I'm going to love the rest of this. But oh my God, I love this book. It has such great quotes from all of the Indigenous leaders in it, and such a great way to put together the legal history of how it is that Canadians really should be looking at treaty rights as well as legal rights for Indigenous people. And Yeah, and the disparaging again with a boot on our neck for so many decades before starting to recognize some rights, but we still haven't done any substantial changes, and it's already 2025. So yeah, love this book. Love Jody. I don't really. I'd have to re-listen to the WordFest thing because that was way before Christmas even. I want to say it was last October or something. So I'd have to re-listen to it in order to remember what his role in that was. But it's just so well put together. So I loved it. Kat, do you want to chime in?
Sure, thank you. I agree with everything you said, as I usually do. Um, uh, every settler Canadian should read this book because it lays out from the very beginning, from like prehistory right up to present day. And they've got receipts through the quotes, it's all documented, what happened. I love that it started with a quote from Georges Erasmus, which is a nice follow-up from last book club. The structure of the book following a totem pole was really cool, and how each part of the totem pole meant something specific, and they correlated that with what was going on in the history of this so-called country, and obviously what Indigenous people, well, maybe what her people were thinking and doing through the totem pole. And of course, she said she doesn't speak for all Indigenous folks. So there was a brief shining moment when settlers and Indigenous people were actually on equal footing, had an equal relationship, and it looked like with the two-row wampum that they were gonna, proceed on this course as sort of equal and separate, and we'll leave each other alone and, live good lives in peace and harmony. And then 20 pages later, they say, of course, we cannot pinpoint a moment in time in our past when the potential and possibility of constructive and positive relationships between Indigenous peoples and the crowns was lost. That sucks. I mean, obviously a lot goes on in history, and there are a lot of moving parts to it. And of course, there probably wasn't just one thing that flipped the switch, but Canadians should know that this is how we started out. We started out with the support of Indigenous peoples. How else would we survive here? And then we sucked and took it over. And I won't go on too much longer because I could talk about like every page of this book practically. But on page 119, they talk about in the 30s how Canada entered into agreements with Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta to give the provinces more control over natural resources. Known as the Natural Resources Transfer Agreements, these documents remain a point of conflict today, including over the impacts on the land and hunting rights in the numbered treaties. I did not know this. So that was one of many things to learn, but how fucked up is that? I mean, that's what we're doing today. The government is just giving resources away, land away to everybody who they think will use it to the best benefit to the country.
Okay, but let's pause that for a second because, like, to me, that is a huge issue. Like, if Treaty 6, 7, and 8 sat down and decided, let's sue the government for all the lost revenue since the 1930s, they absolutely would win that case. They're like, that's not a question. So that's a lot of money being owed to all of those who are from those treaties.
Yeah. And well, I mean, even as they say in the book, every time a land claim or a territorial claim has been made in courts, Indigenous people have won. So are you going to make them go to court every time? For like every single nation has to go to court against the government, provincial and federal? Anyway, I will be quiet now and let the others speak. But yes, love this book. Everybody should read it. The end. Read it and do something because they give you solutions.
Oh, so you finished the book and there's solutions at the fourth?
Well, it's not a list of solutions, but kind of, yeah, like we have to do better, obviously. And if we instituted our cap, our problems would be solved.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. UNDRIP. I think we should really be focused on it because that's like it. I get so mad. I'm gonna go on to TikTok after this and be like, ugh, no, folks, if you understood sovereignty, they're like, we need a new political party that's indigenous. I'm like, no, you need to understand treaty. You need to give us back self-governance. But it's a concept way over the head of them for some reason. It's because they haven't read this for 10 years, I guess. Morgan, how far did you make it? And what would you like to and you can just reflect off of too what we're all talking about.
Absolutely. I don't know where I'm doing the audiobook, so I'm not sure where. Maybe 30 minutes to an hour in, if I'm being completely honest. Kat, what was it called? The Natural Resources Agreement? There was another word in there, but I didn't catch it.
Natural
I can see
resources.
mouths moving, but you're muted.
Oh,
No, that was me.
No, yeah, Michelle. I saw
Go
your
ahead,
mouth.
Kat. Go ahead.
sorry. Natural resources transfer agreements.
Transfer. Okay, I want to look at
And
that.
if you just Google 1930 National Resource Agreement, it'll come up on the Googles. And like all the, well, not all the natives, but all of the natives who are scholars, academics, lawyers, like they all know that history. And even the settlers who claim to be Aboriginal rights lawyers, they know, like they're taught about that as well. It's part of the provincial funding that was given to them. And so that was when the provinces took over national development of like energy resources and such. And that's why it's funny, we were talking about nuclear power that they're trying to put in. And one of the sticking points will be there's an international governing body that takes care of nuclear issues, but there's also a national governing body. And so the idea of Alberta, who is incapable of working with Canada over, I don't know, health transfers, like that might be the sticking point as to why nuclear might not come into the province, because we have the UCP who are so insane that they can't work with any order of government. They can't work with municipal, they can't work with federal, and they certainly can't work with international. So that might be the only reason why these nuclear power plants might not even go in anyway. I mean, I don't want them to go in, but I don't want that to be the reason. But I mean, if that's the reason, that's the reason. So
Yeah, thank you for all of the sharing so far. It's been really impactful. I think I'm making a lot of connections. The first one that I made, Michelle, is when you said something like they treated them like people because I don't know, they're people. It just I've been thinking about just anti-racism and how that seems to be something that people perceive as far left when it's actually just like, oh no, the whole thing is just skewed. Like racism should have never existed and thus anti-racism shouldn't have to exist. And I get that it feels really far for people, but it's also just like, I cannot understand why people are not seen as people. Like it's devastating. And a friend recently was just told me like when we see these like far right movements and this like such outrageous hate against humanity and against people, it's just like it's so easy to just spiral because that's something that I cannot comprehend. But they were like, don't try to make it make sense. You will go insane. But it's different learning the history. I think knowing that there's so many quotes through this book, I'm really motivated to listen to it. I was motivated regardless, but for me, quotes really stick because there's lived experience through it, and there's personality through it. It's not just words on a page. It's words from someone's mouth. And I don't know if this would resonate, Michelle, but I feel like that's the storytelling of indigeneity that's going through the book as well. That I think I would assume that works for most brains, but it really works for my brain. So I really appreciate when there's stuff like that. It's also really easy to weave that into moving people to action, or saying something in a different way that sparks something for someone where they're like, oh, right. And even just the continued reflection of, we are the Israelis in this case, and the irony that people are shouting, well, it's not everyone, not enough people even, but really empowered about trying to shift what's going on, the genocide, one of many genocides that's happening. But it's just like the irony that people can't see what's underneath their feet. Like, it's scary. I had a reflection. I agree, Kat, the totem pole, that was a beautiful metaphor. But the thing that I heard in it, like right off from the very beginning of the book, was the Thunderbird is at the top. And I remember, Michelle, you're Red Thunder Woman. And I was like, I wonder if thunder is a part of the Thunderbird. You can answer or not whenever you're comfortable. But I was like, yes, Michelle does belong at the top of the totem pole. I think there was another reflection or two in there. If anyone has this time or space within this meeting, I would love to hear an expansion on the indoctrinated discovery, something like that. But certainly I can go and Google these things as well and find my own answers. It's not an expectation, but just that sparked another. I'm like, I'm gonna be writing things down over here.
No, that's okay. It's so I was kind of making fun of that Anglican church follower, but for this reason is that of the 94 calls to action, there's a whole section for churches, right? And they haven't done this work. Even some of their devout followers seem to think they do. And that's actually, we have a organization within the city that tries to say, oh no, we're an alliance. And I'm like, what work are you guys really doing? And I know some backstory there that I won't get into this recording, but I'll just read this part to you very specifically, just because I think it matters. When Europeans arrived in what is now Canada, there was significant recognition by both European and First Nations of the significant differences that they observed of each other. Some of their respective ways of living caused confusion and questioning. What was being observed was how fundamentally different worldviews, belief systems, and cultures manifested themselves in different social, economic, and political systems and patterns. While the doctrine of discovery had a focus on taking up the lands and conversion to Christianity, some of the contact and interaction with First Nations and Europeans was marked by cooperation, peace, and friendship. This included the formation of economic and trade relations, as well as other patterns of mutual support. In the early days, when the number of Europeans was quite small, there was often reliance by Europeans on First Nation peoples for aspects of their survival. Well, the doctrine of discovery itself is this Christian belief system that was given by the Catholic Church that said, if they are not Catholics, they're not people, and therefore there's no one inhibiting or on those lands. So that belief system is what gave Europeans not just Indigenous people here in Canada, but like in South America, in Central America, all of those islands, and then going to Africa because they weren't Catholic, that it was okay to make them slaves, right? So like it was that mindset that really allowed them to be like, oh, well, because you guys aren't civilized like us and you're not Christian, we can take your land because you're not real people. Like they literally seen us like animals, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I would really like to look into that some more because especially as like a queer trans person, that's like that is definitely a shared um understanding or in the Venn diagram, there's a shared spot in the center between queer trans people and indigenous because we're seeing like the violence of religion or Christianity against like my partner's parents literally told us we were indoctrinating our kids because we're queer and trans and we're letting them use the pronouns that they want and so I think that um while it's bittersweet because I feel like with a lot of the Christian outsider views and the violence that has come from that has made a lot of queer trans people wake up. It's also just like it's really hard when people need to experience something firsthand before they can understand it or before they can feel like it matters. It's like as soon as someone's on your yard, then it's like, oh, hey, now we're mad. But there's been cries for mutual understanding and action for decades. And it's just kind of like, oh, as soon as it impacts you, that's when you suddenly care. Um, and the work of trying to get ahead of that now as a settler is hard, but it's important and necessary. And
There's this really good book I want to recommend to you.
yeah.
I hope there's an audio, but it's like one of those academic books that is like super like $100 kind of thing. But I think I have two copies at home because whenever I go to Ferris Fairs and there's one there, I take it. And so, right, because it's only $20 or something. So anyway, it's called The Importance of Monogamy. And it's about building Alberta through a Christian lens with patriarchy. And it shows by design how it didn't include women or natives as people, and how it created Alberta that only men could own land. And it created the gender binary so that if you weren't a married white woman to a white man, you didn't matter. And this book actually kind of talked a little bit about that, not as well as Sarah Carter does in that book. She's an academic. She's the one who wrote the book. She in this book specifically, it really alludes to that with the Métis because the Métis were the offspring of Native women, and Native women were dirt, right? Like lower than dirt. So the offspring didn't matter, right? That's why Métis are like an oppressed group of people. And they really talked about that in this book quite well, talking about Métis. But this book specifically is about making Alberta. And it's based off of the binary. And it's based off of excluding women, excluding Indigenous, so that only white men could own the land. And that's what they did. So like it's a really great book at not just showing the doctrine of discovery, but the mentality of British white men making British white laws, imposing it into a new place and just saying now it's ours, and screw all of these natives that were there and screw all the women as well, like even their women, right? Like building Alberta was such a patriarchal system. And like just to give perspective, in my lifetime, they only now installed women's washrooms in the legislature, like in my lifetime, because it was only men who worked, right? Yeah, like only men. And like I'm the first generation to have a license, a driver's license. While I am a stay-at-home mom now, I was one of the first women in my family to ever work outside the home, ever. Right? Like, and I think that a lot of people don't understand that's the history of Alberta. And I think especially if you come from elsewhere, if you come from Toronto, where they had done this, 300 years before here, like they don't know how new settler colonialism is here, right? And so I remember going to Ottawa and being like, I'm a sovereign citizen, fuck off. and everyone there like not understanding at all what I'm saying. Like, I mean, I'm already like that here in Calgary, except with some elders. Like, elders know what I'm saying, but like most Calgarians have no fucking clue. But honestly, like, Inglewood is brand new, and people don't see it that way, right? So they see it as historic Calgary, and it's like, well, no, it's not. Like, it's 100 years old. It's not a big deal, right? And it's because my DNA is talking 30,000 years ago, right? Like we have rights to these lands, like, and that was said so clearly throughout this entire book by all the Indigenous leaders. They're like, these are our lands. Like, what the fuck are you Canadian politicians thinking? Like, they didn't say it that way, but that was the attitude. Like, how can you not get we have rights here? So yeah, I love this book. I hope that helps elaborate that. Kat, Wendy, do you want to kind of elaborate on the doctrine of discovery? I put the human rights link in our chat in the hopes that like that might be a good link to go to later. But again, I don't know if they have a good audio. Kat or Wendy, do you want to expand it all about the doctrine of discovery? And Wendy, do you want to do a reflection too?
I can if you, but since we're on the topic of doctrine of discovery, maybe it's a good time. I was just pausing in case Kat, you wanted to jump in there. Yeah, I have been raised Christian my whole life, so very interesting to me that I learned about that through this book club instead of through all of the different interactions there. So the only thing I guess I would add is it's quite interesting the slow, and it could be even more strongly worded. But there is some acknowledgement on page 290. There's some quotes from Pope Francis in the during the apologies. And so anyway, I thought it was, well, he could have said even more, but there is statements there that quote him as saying, it's true, it's bad, it's unjust. Even today it's used, that mentality that we're superior and Indigenous people don't count. That's why we have to work on what was done that was bad, but with the awareness that even today that same colonialism exists. I actually think that last part is what I like most about this quote, is a recognition that it's not only historic, that there is still a lot going on. So I think I took a lot from that inclusion, but definitely find it very interesting. I have interacted with many Christian people my whole life, and this is not talked about very much. So it's just that's the part of it that I'm sitting with. I'm just going to pause there, Michelle, before I reflect in case others want to add any more about the doctrine of discovery. I think it's a really important part.
I'll pop in and say, yes, I was raised Catholic too. And no, are you kidding? You think they'd talk about that? Oh, yeah, because we're so great. We came and destroyed a whole culture and people. But yes, I think it's important for people of this country to know this is also foundation of the country. Basically coming from Pope whoever saying, yeah, go out and conquer and Christianize everybody because they don't mean anything. So, and it goes to what Morgan was saying too. It's like people are people. You have to respect other people. And what kind of Christian are you? If you're doing this? You're no kind of Christian if you're still colonizing people. Because aren't you all about love and, love thy neighbor and all that stuff? You're being really hypocritical if you're not. Anyway, I'm babbling.
Wendy, do you want to reflect a little further on the book in general?
Sure. Thanks so much. What a great book, but I don't actually know if I'm done reading it or not. I think I wanted to add in this layer of how it went this month because I think it's deepening what I'm able to take away from the book. Um, I had just logistically had to start the book via the audiobook. So I started listening to it on the audiobook, and then I got my copy of it, and then started kind of reading. And then I was like, oh, where am I going to catch up? Like, which part am I even at anymore? Um, and then when I started looking at the physical book alongside kind of catching up where I was with the audiobook, I was getting totally different things from the experience. And what I liked about that was, so I was following along what she was saying and kind of the analogy that she makes to the totem pole throughout and has each section kind of relating to a part of that. And I thought I was hearing that and understanding it. And then when I picked up the physical book and was seeing the images and just it really brought to life a lot more deeply for me, what she was trying to describe. And then the way that the physical book is laid out, um, it just felt even more of an unraveling of all of these quotes. Like she had really done so much to pull in the whole story in a way that's told by the players that were involved, the people that were at those times. And in the audiobook, she has different voices doing it. So she has lots of different indigenous people from different nations who speak, but not necessarily like it's just different voices, and then they say who they're quoting and then they speak it. So anyway, the audiobook is super rich experience, and then the book itself has been a totally different rich experience. And now I'm in the last chapter or two, and I'm kind of jumping between the two versions and just kind of pulling out. And I find I kind of go down these different rabbit holes. Like I come into just being really interested in a certain part that I hear in the book on my audio version, and then I go to the regular hard copy, and then I'm looking at the images, and then I get caught up in looking at the images. So I just she did such a beautiful job. They both did a beautiful job laying this out. And I think it also, I was really curious, Michelle, if you were being super strategic and clever in having us read George Erasmus's book last month, because it really brought this to life even more. Like just having read that book and then coming to this one, I felt like I knew a little bit more of that story, and then those quotes from him had so much more meaning for me, because we had kind of heard his whole journey, and then it made me so curious about all of the other people. Like he's one of so many that she pulls out at different points in the timeline as being very active and saying certain speeches or giving certain quotes. And anyway, so this is I don't feel like I'm even close to being done because I keep coming back at this book from so many directions. I think it also um has really uh, I guess I'm trying to use the right words for it, but I do think it's interesting the way that she chose quotes. The way that she chose quotes to support a certain point, and then she would have those dialogue points. And you've already mentioned some of them, with Mulrooney or Crychen or just the other different politicians at different points in time and kind of the dialogue between them. I think it is really opening the wonder that I have about what is all the dialogue that's going on right now. We hear pretty much the sound bites that you hear in the news are like these quotes. They're like these little bits that come out. And then it just has me just wondering about all the conversations that are going on that are happening right now. Like the way she lays it out does tell the story so well in terms of the different people interacting and all the different choices that they're making along the way lead us to where we are right now. And it's making me want to read some of her other books. So my ongoing uh, dilemma about reading too many books at once. I'm now getting to her Indian in the Cabinet book, and just really like I just want to read more and more and more of her work. So that's been really fantastic. I'm just taking a quick glance back. I think maybe the only other thing um, that I'll add is really uh, well, maybe I'll leave it at this, and maybe Michelle, you can add some more comment because I do feel very interwoven, the book from last month and this month's book. And the other piece that this drove me to that I really enjoyed, I went to look at more and more video clips of George Erasmus, and when he was talking about RCAP, and there's one of him talking about it in 2017, and just I don't know, he's just got some really wise things to say. And now I just have a lot more that I want to know about RCAP because the things that happened there and then didn't fully get realized because we didn't fund it properly. And then things around the TRC. I just feel like we have this iterative issue where actually all of the things we need to do are right in front of us. As a white settler, I'm now realizing they've been in front of us for decades, centuries. But then it's that bigger question of like, well, it's still right in front of us. And what are the pieces of all of these pieces in front of us that we can just keep moving forward? So I'm really just curious, Michelle, if that was part of your thinking, because that is really strengthening last month's book as well as this one as I went through this one this month. Thanks.
Oh, I wish I was that clever. Oh my God. No, it was just by chance, literally by chance. And just because they're so connected as First Nation leaders and, doing that work, because her dad, Bill Wilson, would have been kind of George's time, right? Like they would have been tag teaming each other. So like Jody's grown up in this world where like I'm sure maybe you guys don't remember this, but there is this wonderful conversation, and it was during the red paper, white paper conversations with Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Bill Wilson, a young Bill Wilson at the time, sat there and just said to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, actually, I'm going to back up even more there. So the elders and the Indigenous people said, we want to start by an opening prayer. So they started smudging, and the arrogant, impatient, Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Jean Chrétien started speaking, interrupting in the middle of the smudge, in the middle of the prayer, and started doing the Catholic prayer that you do all the time. And they were doing it, yes, big L, big L for liberal. Just kidding. So anyway, they were so rude. It is one of the most disgusting displays you'll ever see. And so Bill Wilson said to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, my daughters want to go to school, become lawyers, and become prime minister so that they can change these laws. And I'm trying really hard to teach them not to, but they are adamant that's what they're going to do. So then, of course, in 2015, when Justin and Jody were in cabinet together and she was the first justice minister, like it was a full circle moment. And that video kept kind of coming up to kind of talk about this like intergenerational harm from before that was coming forward that they were trying to resolve. And when you read Indian in the Cabinet, like you're going to read, Justin is not his father, but if you see the clips of his father, he was pretty bad. So Justin's come a very far way, but he's still very much an arrogant, patriarchal liberal, right? And so in Indian in the Cabinet, you really read how it was like, no, you do this. And the most patriarchal concept, but from and just knowing Justin, no concept, right? Like he did a lot of work on with Indigenous in BC, enough to obviously appropriate a Haida tattoo. But that bigger picture is that he thought he was better, and he is, and far better with mental health. But like and again, like I remember in the 80s when they put the washrooms in the legislature, like you have to remember that because of Justin Trudeau being birthed and Pierre Elliott Trudeau not being allowed in the birthing room is the reason why nationally men were allowed into the birthing room. It was because of Justin Trudeau's birth. So only in the 70s were men started to allow into some of the hospitals while the women gave birth. Like that's how patriarchal it has always been, right? So it's just that coming around. So anyway, Bill Wilson and Georges Erasmus and all of these leaders are in this room with Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Jean Chrétien saying "fuck you," and now the offspring, are like, oh my God, I remember when this happened, and giving an account of that situation from this point of view, and her knowing who the people were that were around the table. Like all of her uncles are like, William or Murray Sinclair, and these people that I will always look up to. Like she grew up under the table while they were chit-chatting, right? So that's how come she knew. And it was just by chance that and that's what I do. I just pick them out of the blue. And I was going to make the announcement that January was going to be the Lesser Blessed, because that book is having its 30-year anniversary. I've never read it. So, now that it's a banned book in Alberta, we're all reading it for January's book club. And that was really it. And just because Jody has such a ties to Georges Erasmus, and I would imagine too that there's a bit of political publishing there too, because so Murray Sinclair's son, Nagan Sinclair, like he has his doctorate in English, and only now, like this generation, since are we seeing Indigenous literature at all, right? So that there is a pocket of publishing and such, right? And making sure you get the right quotes from the right people, and if it's the same publishing company, I should check to see George's book and Jody's book and see if they're the same publisher, because they already may have had that tie as well. And they would have all been released last year. So this Word Fest that's coming up next month, a lot of those books will be the next year's book club, because I'll be getting their books. And my favorite one that I'm looking forward to is Bob Joseph is coming out with another book. So I already have my ticket for Word Fest. So I'm going to buy the book, get him to sign it. And then that'll probably be I don't know, Marches or something, because February I'll probably try to do something along the lines of a Black Indigenous author, or just because I think it's important to highlight that there are Black Indigenous people, right? So you have the two experiences in one person, and it's she was talking at USay this weekend, and as a lesbian, she says, I don't want to come across as a man hater. And I'm like, you're not. Every single time a queer opens their mouth, we all learn. End of discussion. We have to change, not you. We have to change. And so I wasn't even there for that, but I knew I was really proud of what she was trying to convey about how, she was basically saying all men, right? And my husband, he's been really wanting to debunk manosphere shit, because it just drives him mental too. So anyway, just that bigger picture, it just kind of patriarchy all is the central theme of all of Indigenous policy against Indigenous people. And as we unpack it, I thought the national inquiry was really going to change people's minds, but I don't even see queer organizations, pushing that as a fundamental part of their organizations. And it's this is completely queer centered. It's all about gendered violence. It's about dismantling patriarchy. I just thought for sure we'd have more people get on board with that. So I didn't mean to go on a rant. What are we talking about? We're talking about Georges and Jody having so much, similarity. But I hope that gives context as to, you know, why I had them the way I did, but also her history. Like she grew up in leadership and was raised matriarchal in her own community, even though she had a white mommy. Her mom made sure she was in all of those matriarchal circles while her dad was doing politics out in Ottawa, right? So, and while he was doing that, that's where George's was, and that's where all of our leaders were, from Elijah Harper to, well, everyone written in this book, for God's sakes. Such a great book, holy. Yeah, I invite anybody to unmute and chime in.
Do you know if Elijah Harper has written a book?
Geez, I don't know if he did before he died.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I know I finally got Harold Cardinal's book, An Unjust Society.
Mhm.
And I found it at Ferris Fair, and I was thinking about making that one of the book club selections, because most people have read that one book and like, oh, then I knew this world was so wrong. And I'm
Mhm.
like, it's a pretty powerful book, but it was one of the first Indigenous books ever written too. So that's probably a big part of it.
Yeah, no, I was just curious about his story because what a huge thing he did just by his one guy just standing up against the whole weight of the Canadian government.
Yeah, no
Just
kidding.
yeah.
So I'm just having a look, and there was it looks um like other people wrote it about him, but it doesn't look like it was like one that he did. Roy McGiver. Hmm. No, I don't think he ever wrote a book. He has an education fund that I just found.
Hmm.
But yeah, it sounds like there's books about him.
Right.
I don't know. So yeah, he has a fund, and he was still a deep faith man of Christ. Those Indian residential schools, God damn it. So this one person, Toronto Public Library, has this like Rebecca Shull's Hand, 2008, 24 pages. So that doesn't sound like a real book. Doesn't sound like something I'd want to buy, that's for sure. Yeah, but it sounds like his big legacy is having an education fund. But I think that bigger picture too is that we as Indigenous people, like I remember seeing Lee Miracle in person, and she said outright that she had to create a petition to the publishers and have people commit to buying her book before a publisher would even read her book, let alone publish it. Right. So that was this in this generation. Right. And yeah, I know, like that's how we've been excluded, right, from Can Lit. That's why when I'll say Can Lit, Can Reads, Can Books is kind of racist, and people are like, how can you say that? But they don't have that context, right? Like they don't understand we were purposely excluded. So, like even for me, as many books as I have read, and what would be the book I would write that hasn't really been written, and it would have to be my story, right? So I don't know if Elijah Harper, like Murray Sinclair, oh God, and Georges Erasmus, and like, okay, Morgan, you don't understand. We read this book, and because he was one of the key writers of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, he reread draft after draft after draft, and did a little bit of editing and gave it back to their people. Like this had over 444 recommendations, and he did it, he wrote it, right? Like, yeah, no, like this guy read and read and read. And Murray Sinclair, I think the same thing of him when doing the TRC, because like we did the volumes of the books for the TRC, not just like the 94 calls to action, but like the backstory to every call to action. And I would own the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples if I could own it. But there's like, it's just a government PDF that is accessible, but it's not something like I can own. So anyway, like the amount of writing and you have to understand that like this was the first generation to be able to go to university. My aunt was the first Dene lawyer here in Alberta. She worked with Masquatchis. She's unfortunately dying of cancer right now. And so she's had a long history of 30 years of legal work in Alberta. And like she's one of the first lawyers because we weren't even allowed legal representation until the 60s. And so yeah. So yeah, it's a dark history. And actually this book talks about that a little bit. It doesn't talk about it as well as like George Erasmus' book. But like Wendy was saying, they just go together so nice. Like they were perfect together. And the next book is absolutely going to be not anything about these histories at all. It's just a fun popcorn read because so the next book we had, because it's October, we have he's so good looking too. Oh my God. Stephen Graham Jones. You should look him up. He always does like spooky stuff, and he was like in university in Florida while Scream first aired, and he was obsessed with horror. So anyway, and I hate this terminology for him because he deserves better, but they always call him the native Stephen King because he writes horror, only it's from he's Blackfoot, but he's American, so he's Blackfeet. So anyway, he's like this one that we're going to read. I Was a Teenage Slasher is the winner of the Bram Stoker Award, the Shirley Jackson Award, the ALA Alex Award, the Los Angeles Times Ray Bradbury Prize, and Mark Twain American Voice in Literature Award. And it's a horror. Yeah, and it's one of the series, so like he's just a fun writer if you like to read literature that's horror based or listen to it as well. So and these are some of the things that are said, like Jones has given the world a gift by the Library Journal. Scary good, gritty and gorgeous, says the New York Times, right? Like that's this book. So, he's the first year I did the book club, I read his book Mongrel, and I just loved it because it was about being a half-breed, but it was also about being a werewolf and a half-breed. So it was so fun. It was one of my favorite books I've ever read because it was the first time I'd ever read an Indigenous author do horror. So, and I'm like big on Sookie Stackhouse. I'm big on all of the genre. I used to read Anita Blake, Vampire Hunter, religiously, but then she went all porny and I just wasn't into the porn and the horn. So, I quit reading it, but they were so good. And I read Stephen King as a kid, so I've always been into horror. I seen like every slasher movie when I was a teenager against my parents' will. So I just love horror. Love it, love it, love it. I've seen all the Screams, love them. So I just feel so much commonality with him, and he's incredibly good looking, so that also helps.
And now you also have the wolf cut, so that really kind of like brings it into the
right. He came here. Shelley brought him to WordFest. So I met him, and I was like, oh my God, I love all your books, and he wrote in mine. So I can't really read it. Michelle, only wish I'd said blah blah on something smarter, on someone smarter, based something on something. I don't know. I would have to reread. He was just so funny. Like he's just a funny guy too. So this is going to completely derail all of the Jody Wilson-Raybould and George's Erasmus massive like quotes of history. And Harold Cardinal and all of these like Indigenous leaders that did all of the work so that I could be here doing a silly book club with like a fun horror book for October. Like I am kind of back to Wendy's point. I just am so grateful for every single Indigenous leader. And that's why like when people give me praises, I'm like, oh my God, you should read this. You should read this. You should read this because these are the real Indigenous leaders that have done all of the groundwork so that someone like me could exist and tell the Calgary Stampede that they're racist and tell nonprofits in Calgary that they're racist and explain the harm they do at length in my podcast. Like I'm walking or I'm flying thanks to their trail that they created, right? And I think about that with my aunt too, who like she represented natives and nations and oil, and she helped a lot of folks. A lot of people have told me she was the one who helped with them owning house. She was the one who helped with their residential school legal papers. You know, she was the one who would help with things like that up at Samson Cree Nation. She married a Sasakamoose, and changed her name and did that work up in Enoch and Maskwacis, that area. So anyway, yeah, I just think of all the Indigenous leaders before us, and Wendy and I just like absolutely falling in love with all of them through these two books, you know. Oh yeah, I'm going to pause this for 1 second. So we were just having a little conversation about, why I should not be talking and coveting other men. But then we started talking a little bit about the new law that's going to be coming into Alberta and all of the parents directly affected by these forms expecting proof that girls were born girls. And I wanted to circle back to the conversation about the importance of monogamy by Sarah Carter, because in that she did talk about how settlers were so scared panties of our two spirit, those who identify as 2S LGBTQ, lesbian. We had different terminology, and every language group had their own language to determine or to say the roles of that person that wouldn't be so binary the way that settlers think. And the reason why that mattered was because when they were imposing male only land ownership, white male only land ownership, they didn't want to confuse anybody. We didn't want any natives, obviously, no queers at all, no women at all. And they that was part of the impetus of doing that, was the erasure of indigenous to us LGBT, as well as not giving women rights. So, and I bring that up because in the context of this conversation in 2025, where our girls who already don't receive dollar for dollar funding when it comes to sports in Canada, in Alberta, in recreational sports in general. A reminder to everybody that there are sports calls to action through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that have not been fully realized. This is just trying to move it back to a place where we're just not including women. I don't remember if it was recorded or not, but I had made the point that I remember in the 80s when the legislature had just finally put women's washrooms in the legislature, and how mad all of the male MLAs were about it and the male staffers, because God forbid women have a role in government and the legislature in Alberta. What a horrible time, let me tell you. I'm just joking. It's just ridiculous saying these words out loud. And this was in my lifetime. And yet here we are trying to go back in time, not allowing trans girls and women the same rights and opportunities. Ironically, already an oppressed group of people, white or not, settler or not, in Alberta. And me, I graduated high school in 1994. As everyone knows, the last official residential school closed in 1996. Some say 1997, 98. And I was whitewashed. So, like, for me, I was like, what do you mean women don't have the right to do this or that? I remember me and Art Hanger having a conversation on the phone and me telling him he was a piece of shit for not letting women go shirtless if they so choose to sunbathe in their own yard. We had that conversation in the 90s, me and him. So, like, I just wanted to give context to that so that when we talk about what's happening going after girls in sports, like, at the end of the day, patriarchy doesn't want girls in sports to succeed, period. And the trans agenda that they're pushing right now is actually coming straight from the States. This is my opinion from what I have seen and read about Danielle Smith going down to the inauguration and the conversation with the people who want to separate, as well as Danielle Smith being promised money in order by Trump in order to join the United States. So really and truly, this anti-trans agenda is just helping Trump and helping the narrative that Alberta needs to become American. And who's caught in the crossfire? Albertans, trans women in sports. Like, this is crazy. So I just want to give some context to that conversation as well, and how ridiculous it is here, September 2025. We're all parents coming home with these forms that are so, like, this is a human rights case. I can't believe that nobody said, here's the form I'm going to take to the courts. We're launching against the government of Alberta. And I do believe Skipping Stone is starting that. Maybe EGAL is helping them. So anybody who's listening to me, please sign up at Skipping Stone's email list, as well as EGAL's, because this is ridiculous. It is 1925, and I'm talking about the history of 1905 in order to correlate why this is happening in 2025, along with the ridiculousness of this boomer that's dying in the States that's apparently the Cheeto president. Like, I can't even believe these words are being said out loud in a sentence. So I'm just going to pause this to let anybody reflect who needs to be off the record. I can't even believe this conversation.
Want me to say
Can you explain to me a little more, Morgan, about terminology and the preference of saying assigned female at birth?
Yeah, I had just said that terminology that I was offered at some point, because we're all learning and unlearning. It's someone would say like assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth versus born a girl or born a boy, because it really does come down to, especially if someone is trans, they've been that way. It's just they were misunderstood based on the body parts and the assumptions made when that baby is birthed about what that means about their gender, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. We have a guest that's going to be returning here shortly who was telling me that they were assigned male at birth, lived a life of being a male, but when they were in residential school were forced to be a girl, and they loved it. And then when they got older and retired out of the military, they realized and transitioned into being a female, and that was who they were supposed to be. And they just disclosed to me at Pride that, and this is public, and they can't wait to tell the story, that they actually are a very unique type of intersex. So kind of back to that assumption, they just survived cancer and they didn't even know it, but the cancer was on their ovaries. And because they were intersect, because nobody had done like a scan of their insides, it was just assumed they were male. And then it was assumed they live a life of being a male. Then they transitioned, and then they were doing some special genetic testing and found out they were intersect, had cancer with ovaries. And it's just an incredible story. So I think the word assumption is the perfect word to describe it, because even if we're not talking about trans, the intersect community as well, really being misunderstood and not properly, like, assumptions made. So I just think it's such a wonderful teaching, and I hope it helps other folks who are listening of trying to use that terminology, assigned female at birth, to help just moving forward. I think that's such a great teaching, and I'm grateful that you were willing to do that here. Thank you.
Of course. I know exactly who you're talking about, but I won't say anything out of privacy. But
returning guest, they're so excited to talk about it. So I'm excited to talk about it with them.
Yeah, it's a cool story for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, does anybody else have any reflections more about reconciling history, George Erasmus, maybe next book club, or some of the conversation that we had today about Alberta and their ridiculous anti-trans, and I guess females, women in sports conversation, and kind of back to that conversation where like somebody like me, learning my privilege as a straight cis person, realizing this will never affect any Albertan boys in the like what privilege to not be having this conversation as Alberta boys. Um, and it's so derogatory towards females. It's gendered violence, systemic institutional gendered violence by the state against people. I just can't even believe we're having these conversations. So yeah, any other reflections about the book, anything at all?
I did have some reflections just about the prison system and some recent lore that I have acquired. I don't know. At some point, it did feel relevant, and I feel like we've completely lost the thread. And it is after 8 p.m. So potentially, I'll just save it for after, or if anyone wants to stick around, because it made me. You also, Michelle, you used a phrase at some point when you're like, and then they started doing slavery or something like that, and I was like, that made me think about how a lot of people would like to imagine that slavery has been abolished, but some of the things that I've learned about the prison system here on Turtle Island, it's really not. It's absolutely so not. But yeah, I'll go with what the group says and decides before I go on.
Wendy, Kat, do you have any more reflections you want to add? No. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being on here. And I will stay with Morgan to talk about this because I was just telling my child about how, especially in the States, there's buses that leave the prisons every day and they go to the McDonald's, and those are the people who are actually working. So like we have the temporary foreign workers program here, which I've always called slavery. But in the States, they legitimately use prison labor through that system in order to keep that thing whole going. And Sam was horrified when I was telling them about this. But now with the ICE raids that they're doing, and they are taking some people out of the country, but for like that, this is going to be the new labor, right? This is going to be the new slavery that they use in order to create whatever it is they're going to do. I was explaining what chain gangs were to my daughter, and they were horrified. So, like, that is a part of our institution, and that's how I feel about, all of North America. Like, it's stolen land, stolen labor, stolen people. I just, when I hear people say how proud they are to be Catholic or, Christian or Canadian or American, I'm like, you're proud of all of the boots on the oppressed in order for you to be in this position. And that's, that's why I have so much solidarity with trans folks, with Black people, with brown people, anybody who has been marginalized in some capacity. I can tell you stories of my own visits in Sylvan Lake. The most welcome we ever felt was at the Chinese restaurant, right? That's where we would have our visits. And I found out that's a historical part of Indigenous Chinese relations, is that they were the only people who were willing to serve us. So, yeah. And we still have sundown towns everywhere, really. So, anyway.
Well, and who's the large part of or proportion of the prison population? It's Indigenous and Black folks.
Yeah.
It's feeding the capitalist machine. Oh my God. Anyway, I have to go pee. I'm gonna go. I will see you all next month. Thank you, Michelle and Wendy and Morgan for your wonderful words. And yeah, we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Kat. And for folks who missed it, if you go to Settlers Book Club, you can find out more about Kat's book clubs too. If you want to read more quicker, True Reconciliation by Jody Wilson-Raybould is the next book. Bye, Kat. Wendy, do you want to add anything to what we're talking about that too?
Well, I think this went to lots of good places today. As I said, I have lots more to read in our book, but one of the things I did catch a glimpse of at the very end was just her emphasis on that we all need each other, that like Indigenous and non-Indigenous do need each other in different ways. And we non-Indigenous have a lot of catching up to do. But these kinds of conversations can weigh us down. But I'm really glad we had them. And I think the part that doesn't weigh me down is the constant reminder from Jody Wilson-Raybould, but many others who also remind like this is not for everybody to like toss up their hands and just be like, oh, it's all horrible everywhere you look. It's it's meant to be a reminder of like, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do if this is your moment in history? We see this happening over and over again. Like, so what do we do about it? That's the part that I'm sitting with right now.
Love that. Well, and I think it is important. Like we are treaty partners, and I have so many relatives that are settlers. Like this isn't going to end. We just got to do it better. I think, I always hope that, that's the point of the 444 recommendations of our CAP, the 94 calls to action, the 231 calls to justice. There are solutions. We can do it, starting with being treaty partners, right? Like just as our ancestors intended. So anyway, I appreciate that too. Thank you, Wendy.
And thank you both. I am going to go
Okay.
put my kids to bed, but it was nice to meet you, Morgan. And thanks again, Michelle, for
All right. Take care, Wendy.
And at the risk of always bringing this back into a queer lens, it's just like there has to be a multitude of paths forward, right? If we're to do one path forward, we're just replicating the same thing all over again, where it's like we're all going to have a different lens. We're all going to suggest a different path, and it doesn't have to be one, as long as they're all inclusive and they're coming back together. And
yes, it really is a simple concept of equity, but the problem is if you're at the top and you're a capitalist and you have all the money, do you really want to share?
These are like kindergarten lessons, folks. Like, come on.
Yeah, real simple.
Okay, you ready for this prison tea?
Let's talk about prison tea. Do you want to record it or do you want me to pause it?
It's fully up to you. I'm happy to go on record, but
I'll keep it going.
Okay. So this is I still have not had the chance to fact check it, but honestly, it all checks out for me with what I have seen in across Turtle Island, below in the US. Is the US Turtle Island as well?
Yeah, so Turtle Island is like this pan-Indigenous term that some people use, usually more out east, those folks. Like the Blackfoot themselves, they wouldn't call it Turtle Island, and the Dene wouldn't call it Turtle Island. But like, a lot of people have like those Eastern teachings and have kind of expanded on it as opposed to that. But like the land is the land, right? So, and Turtle Island, the concept itself, like if you kind of scroll out and look at North America, like you can kind of make it look like a turtle if you kind of tilt your head and see, so it's not offensive by any stretch, but I think it's important to acknowledge North America, A, is not America, and two, without boundaries. So to me, it's a more inclusive way to talk about it as a continent. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you for that.